anyone can be a techie or sound like a techie because all you need is the confidence, and anyone can sell. The only thing is, doesn't matter even if whatever you're saying is completely false. You just need to say it so confidently that the person on the other side should feel that, genuinely feel that, okay, she knows the shit that she's talking about, and that's all that matters. Wherein I used to go to the local villages and actually go around capturing biometric to see if my terminal was working. And yeah, there was this thing of there's this girl who's coming in jeans and all, and she's taking our fingerprint. तो ये लड़की मेरा प्रॉपर्टी लेके भाग जाएगी. मैं नहीं देने वाला अंगूठे का निशान. Know who your user is and know what they want, what they would do, and do as much research as you want on your user, because that is the crux of cracking how your startup would work. And if you've cracked that, you don't have to worry a single day for product market fit.
On CXO Talks today, I have with me a very relentless entrepreneur. Someone who's right now the co-founder and COO of the 100th unicorn in the country. Yet, she's had multiple failures in the past. Why? Because she did not speak to the users. Ended up building something which was way ahead of its time and had to let go of the team that she had really beautifully built. With me today is my guest, Mabel Chacko, co-founder and COO of Open Financial Technologies, a neobank which is reimagining business banking for SMEs. And she has impacted 3.5 million SME and business owners and built a team of more than 250 people, which is growing fast and steady. Now, let's hear what this CXO talks. Thank you for being on the show, CXO Talks, Mabel. I feel really glad because it's been a while we've been trying to do this, and we're finally here today. And to see you bright and happening just after the G20 summit, I'm really glad you're here today.
Thanks for having me. I've been forever wanting to do this, and I'm super, super, super thrilled to have this talk with you, Sonia.
So, one thing that really intrigues me is, when we started the business of podcasting, something that everybody said is, now that podcasting is happening, radio will be dead. But radio is still very much alive, and it is also evolving. They're also adapting to how a podcast gets integrated into radio. My question is that, when neobanking as a word started coming in, for me as somebody who just heard the word neobanking for the first time, I felt, kya hai ye? What is this? Is this just another bubble? Or is this real? Or will this actually fade out the real banking? So, sabse pehle, first things first, demystify neobanking for us.
New banking, so banking always existed, and very rightly, they do some brilliant work in terms of earning customer trust, managing funds. But then it was always a physical journey when it came to how the customer interacted with the bank, be it to go to make your deposits, forms, withdrawing cash. Later, debit cards came in, and then you still go to an ATM to withdraw. It was first an ATM card, then it was called a debit card when you can use it post terminals and all of that. Then credit came, and credit card came, and it was given to a certain segment only of the society. And there were so many other problems where banking was there, but when you're running a business, there is something called bank account, and then there is something called accounting, and these two are as disconnected as possible. So in our use case, the way we built Neobank for SMEs, the whole idea was to get banking and accounting to speak to each other, so that a lot of otherwise manual work of raising invoices or tracking payments or reconciling all of them become a lot more simpler, and entrepreneurs get to do what they are supposed to do, which is focus on marketing, increasing your sales, getting better ROI, growing and planning for growth, strategizing. And that was a whole idea where we started working on the idea of neobanking. Now, when we started, neobanking was not a word, so we had to do a lot of groundwork to get a lot of conversations going around this entire segment. Because what we had seen was the idea was to start a bank for small businesses. Very quickly, we realized that Tata's, Birlas, they all never got a banking license. So, Anish and Maple.com are not definitely not going to get it happening. And then we looked at how this is evolving in the other markets in Europe, in America. And what we realized is that there was this bunch of fintechs who were building layers on top of the banking layer and building in those markets better experiences for the users. But when it came to India, it is not just about giving a better looking interface, but it was also about solving some of these recon issues or accounting issues. Because while the finance professionals are able to use Tally and QuickBooks and other platforms, the other entrepreneurs like you and me who don't know these things are literally clueless as to what is it, and what is this payment that I made for. Was it a payment I made to unsure? Was it a invoice that was raised by Fawaz that I had made the payment for? And most of this work comes to the month end, and month end is when you're supposed to be focusing on your sales, but you're sitting and doing all of this work with your friendly CA and trying to get everything into in order. And that's somewhere we where we saw the opportunity of building all the tools businesses use around the banking layer, and then giving it to the small business owner to manage everything from one single interface. From there on, neobanking has evolved. Now we whatever infrastructure we had built, we are exposing to others to build neobanks in whatever use cases they see. So there's a neobank coming for school students.
Oh,
Schools are creating a neobanking platform or a savings account for their students. For them, the biggest problem that solves is the fee reconciliation. And in the process, they are giving it to parents like, here's a savings account that you can open for your child's future, right? There's apartment societies, that is coming up with a new bank for apartment societies for maintenance collections. There are dating apps coming up with couple savings accounts so it's a new bank for couples to save towards their marriage goals and towards their future. So very interesting use cases that I get to see. So neobanking kind of is a form factor. It's all about using that as a form to go and solve some of these problems that exist, and build to more use cases that exist.
interesting. And, like as you say that, I can actually start thinking of how many other use cases actually exist. But I also know that you, Mabel, have not been somebody who's technically educated in technology, right? And despite that, doing a fintech venture. And at the same time, because I speak to a lot of entrepreneurs who also happen to be women, a lot of them fear for their life technology. The word tech kind of drives them nuts, and they start believing that this, despite being a problem, may not be solved by them because they don't come with that technical know how. And yet, here you are, this is your fifth venture. So, tell me, how did this happen, and what all came in the way of you getting stopped from feeling that nahi ye ho sakta hai, can I do it, can I not do it, should I pursue this despite not being from a tech background? Because that is something that will be a lot more relevant for our audience, since a lot of them might be feeling that nug or nudge of doubt that might be stopping them from building something that they can massively solve for.
Very true. So earlier, when I started out, entrepreneurship was a pure accident. I actually started out as a content assignment. I wanted to be a content marketer at some point, and I was training to be a translator. So that part of my life was completely into literature and translation and looking at regional literature, and So that's what I thought I would do in my life. What started out as a college with my college seniors as a content assignment, slowly, gradually, I started telling them. So there were these two women founders who who were trying to build a financial inclusion network of micro ATMs. Now, that's something that I personally felt and saw it as a pain in rural Gujarat. The kind of ATMs that we used to see in Ahmedabad or Baroda growing up was definitely not there in the rural areas. And it was very costly for a bank to deploy ATM machines in rural areas. Apart from that, apart from the cost of the machine, it's also the maintenance cost, the AC, the dust free environment, one security guard, and all of that loads up to the cost. So I kind of became a fan of the idea. I started telling them that, listen, why don't we talk to this bank? I have this connect. Luckily for me, I had banker parents, so there was a network that I could go and talk to. And then they were like, why don't you do alliances? And then I started doing a little bit more than they expected me to do. And that's how I became a co founder along with them.
Wow.
But and we managed to get a contract with one of the cooperative banks to deploy 500 of the terminals. So tech was definitely a problem. The access to tech resources in Ahmedabad was definitely not there. So we used to outsource as the MVP was built by giving it as project to engineering college students as a final year project. So two engineering colleges took it as a final year project for their students and gave us two machines that we used to use to demonstrate, and that's what got us the first deal. But then when we got the deal, we had to start thinking of commercializing the whole thing. And there were a lot of other fine tunes because those were still MVPs. And around the same time, both my co-founders, because they're coming from business families in Ahmedabad, got married and they went off to other parts of the world. So now I have a bank project to deliver with royally no clue of what technology looks like. And biometric readers, it was a biometric enabled ATM. So the biometric readers that we managed to get on were imported from China, and they were really bad at detecting the same biometric twice.
And this is before the time
This
of
is much before
UPI,
Aadhaar.
Aadhaar. Yeah.
Much before Aadhaar. So yesterday when I was talking about digital public infrastructure being available, I was thinking, what if I had Aadhaar database then? Then it would have been so much better. Wherein I used to go to the local villages and actually go around capturing biometric to see if my terminal was working. And yeah, there was this thing of there's this girl who's coming in jeans and all, and she's taking our fingerprint. तो ये लड़की मेरा प्रॉपर्टी लेके भाग जाएगी. मैं नहीं देने वाला अंगूठे का निशान. आई विल गिव इट टू ओनली माई वाइफ विल डू इट. You whatever you are doing, okay, I understand, I want to support you, but I'm not giving it to you. You can talk to my wife and you can take her biometric, because so much you can do about it. So it was sad, because one, they're judging me for being a woman. That's one thing. And the other part is that the men folk were so scared that I would run away with their properties or something. So they would not give me the samples. So a lot of struggle. And then trying to see how I can commercially build this entire thing out. Talking to companies, they would tell me, "Aha, you send us the PRD," and I was like, "What the f is that?" And then I realized, okay, product requirement document, and that's supposed to have flows and tech architectural diagrams, and I have got royally no clue how to do it. So I was trying to find if there's an alternative and some other way to do this, or something that doesn't depend on building an entire product. A Google search led me to another company that was doing something similar in Kerala, and they had built everything on using the mobile phone, on the user's phone. And that was great, because now I don't have to deploy a full micro ATM at a Kirana store. The Kirana guy also has a phone, and this my basic premise was that the card, the ATM card or debit card is not something that people were carrying around, and they didn't have a wallet like you and I do. So biometric being the form factor that's always with them, and wanted to use that as the way to access money in the account. And here's this guy who is trying to do this using mobile phones, and both the user, who is the the farmer who's going on to the field and coming back and buying daily groceries at the Kirana store, and the Kirana store owner, both have phones. Thanks to Reliance, thanks to the 500 rupee phone revolution that was happening. And then this was really scalable, because I'm not deploying any machinery. There's no cost for me to do it. And if I adopt that, then probably this becomes a lot more easier. I spoke to the bank, they seem to be okay. And then I reached out to the founder of the startup, whom I had read about on Google and found on LinkedIn, but LinkedIn was paid, so I couldn't connect.
There was a time LinkedIn was
Yeah,
paid.
yeah. To connect to people, you had to pay.
Oh,
And then I reached out to him on Orkut, and I said, like, this is not a friend request; it's a business proposal. And this guy is dumbfounded. 1 second, Orkut was your friend. यहाँ पे business proposal कहाँ से आ गया? So then, so that was Anish Achutan, who later became,
was
I joined him in Cash Next, in the journey of Cash Next. But he was like, listen, you don't have a product, but you have a bank deal. Here, I have a product, and no one is listening to me. How the hell did you manage that? So, yeah, that's what got us started. And I later on joined him in Cash Next. And then on, we did have different kinds of problems in, hiring tech folks. We used to think the ones who used to work in those big companies were the perfect fit for startups. But that's a lesson from another startup
yeah.
for us.
So the way I see it, Mabel, is that while you were already selling without having the solution at that point in time, but futuristic enough to know what the solution will look like.
It's all about the confidence you have. It's something like saying I don't know tech is equal to saying I don't know sales, and anyone can be a techie or sound like a techie because all you need is the confidence.
Yeah.
And anyone can sell. The only thing is, doesn't matter even if whatever you're saying is completely false. You just need to say it so confidently that the person on the other side should feel that, genuinely feel that, okay, she knows the shit that she's talking about, and that's all that matters.
Absolutely. And I think, that's something that you also learned from somebody like a Steve Jobs, right? He was not a techie. He was selling, but he partnered with the right people to actually bring the solution and yet had that confidence to continue selling. And that's a great insight from you because that's what absolutely you've done. Yet, I also know that while Cash Next happened, and thereafter your journey also went on to start another startup, build another venture, but there was a time that you failed. So as an entrepreneur, because I have also failed at one point in time, how does how do you deal with failure and what happened and how did you deal with it? Because you're not just building a venture, you're also building lives who are supporting that business, that venture, and to tell them that maybe this will not work. How did that unfold for you?
That somewhere was my biggest learning lesson, because I was right down at the rock bottom, deep in the trenches of the startup world. And there comes a point where you just can't fall any beyond. And yeah, we were building great tech. It was very futuristic, way futuristic. Somewhere even NFC payments is something that you can happen. You can see that Wi-Fi card hai kya aapke paas? They ask you these questions right now,
Yes.
right? It's not Wi-Fi; it's the NFC
It's
card.
NFC.
Yeah. So those are things that are happening now, and trying to do this in 2009, 2008, 2009, 10 time, it was way ahead of its time. But at the same time, in the entire process, you've built a team. You've got some 40, 50 people along with you in the entire journey, and then you've reached a point where you've got, say, 3, 4 months of runway left. And at that point, the decision is, the conflict in the entrepreneur's mind is, should I try? Can I still do it? Can I talk to another mobile operator to take on this deal? Or should I pay salaries and get everyone jobs and close the entire thing down? And the entrepreneurial bug will never let you take the call saying that I want to close it. You will keep trying. I think from the time we realized that there was no other way ahead for us, everything was going right. We were very much heading towards a pilot, and the other side of the pilot, there was a commitment of VC funding also coming in. So it was all about the pilot happening and we going live with the solution. But at that point, something just happened, and one of the partners in the pilot just backed off, and that happened to be a mobile operator. And then you're stuck And then you're like, should I try and close someone else? There's a SIM card order of that has to be taken over. And we kept trying, I think, for a week or almost 10 days. And then we realized that, listen, changing a SIM card vendor is a very big task in a mobile operator network. And it's not a easy thing. There's regulation, there are a lot of other compliances that come into the play. So it's not happening. And now you just have to fold up. Once we got to that realization, the next part is going and telling the team. And we tried for a week. First 2 days, we didn't even feel like going to office. Third day, the team started wondering that why these two are not coming to office. Why are they not there? Something is wrong. Are they here? Then they figured out that we were in Bangalore itself. So they were very curious as to what's happening. कुछ गड़बड़ हो गया क्या? Shall we help you in somewhere, something? Personally कुछ हो गया or whatever. And third day we went to office and we tried to act it out as everything was fine and everything is okay. Fourth day, it was a Thursday, and I told Anish, I think we should tell. So we gather everyone, but then the discussions just go from one thing to another. What to do on this, what this is completed, the test phase should start, and all of that. So we just couldn't muster the team to say that stop. And then it was Friday, and I was like, listen, this way entire week is gone by, and this will just continue like this. We just need to take a call. So Anish called everyone together on Friday, and we told them that whatever we are building is great. It's really futuristic. You will know in a couple of years, but we need to stop now, and this is practically the end of it. And then the team was silent for a very long time. I could even hear a pin drop. I've never heard about pin drops. I've only heard about pin drop silence. I that day realized what it was. And then somewhere, someone just stood up and started hurling abuses. And it was like, you promised us a career. We came all the way from Rajasthan for you on the vision that you showed us. What happened to that? And that's when I was like, listen, 1 second. I am not saying that I'm not going to pay you or I'm going to salary katungi or whatever it is. What I'm trying to say is we have this much 3 months of runway in hand. We'll pay you salaries for every single day till you find a job and give me your resumes. I'll help you find your next role, next profile in my community of startups. But people really didn't believe. I think they started walking away. uh, Saturday, Sunday, weekend, hardly any movement. Monday, when we reached, no one came to office. I guess they were all giving interviews and figuring out. And I was like, listen, payroll is not until the end of this week, but let's just pay salaries this time. And so Monday, I just paid a salary in advance to everyone. Everyone got their pay, and they were like, some confidence happened. Some of the folks reached out saying that you were telling about sending my profile to your recruiter networks and all. Are you sure you want to do that? I was like, yeah, you give me your resume and I'll get it done. And yeah, these 3, 4 folks came back and I immediately kicked into action, gave it off to my network of startup founders. In 2, 3 days, I managed to get place all of them. And
Yeah.
then that gave confidence to the rest of the folks. They also managed to send me their resumes, and so that by the end of that month almost everyone had attended a couple of interviews, and offer letters were maybe another month away or 15 days away for them. But yeah, just keep doing it and then you bring it to a proper closure. And in that time, I don't know, I never thought of it in, it's only in hindsight that you go and see that whatever you done was right, because incidentally all 50 of them are still in touch with us.
Wow.
And whatever happens in their life, many of them reach back and tell us that, oh, I got married, I had a baby, or I'm going through a breakup, and all of that. All of this somewhere pays in karma points.
Yeah.
And it's all about doing whatever best you can in that situation. Because there are many a times in the entire journey of an entrepreneur, you'll reach a point where there's a roadblock.
Mm-hmm.
To know whether it is a roadblock or is it a rock bottom, that takes wisdom.
Hmm.
If it's a roadblock, probably you will be able to go under it, climb over it, take 10 steps back, you will be able to find another route. But if it's a dead end, then there's no point of, trying to burn out, trying to dig through and see that, there's something else
Yeah.
on the other side. So you should know also where you have to draw the boundaries and say, stop.
Yeah. So if I, you talked about this being a roadblock or a rock bottom, and the dilemma that lies within that is, I'm reminded of this visual that I often see circulating on social media of an entrepreneur trying to continue digging and figuring that maybe there's light at the end of the tunnel, but only sometimes to realize, yes, there's a great opportunity, but sometimes to realize there's nothing. But when you figured out that maybe this is the end, maybe this is where we need to call the shots and just decide that now is the time to just pull the curtains. What led, what was that insight, if you were to briefly let me know, what was that insight or that epiphany in that moment that told you, now is the time that we need to take this call to just shut shop? What was that particular insight?
A lot of that, Sonia, is on analysis of the situation.
Ah.
And if you're just looking at the problem, you're not analyzing the problem. So you need to stop seeing the problem and then you start analyzing what's around it, right? In my case, it was a mobile operator had to be replaced and someone else had to take on the order. Now, that was not possible in the time frame that I had. Probably if I had a longer runway ahead, if I had another 1 year's cash, then I could have probably even tried that. But that was definitely not there. The reality check was the fact that we had 3 months runway left, cash runway left in our accounts. So that was a reality check. Secondly, in 3 months, it's not possible to do another enterprise sales and get on to the other part. So that was the other reality check, that given the time you have, will you be able to do some other pivot to get it happen? If the answer to that is no, if you analyze and you at the end of it the answer to it is no, then that is where you realize that this is a rock bottom. It is a stop. And then from there on you need to start working to close things out in a proper manner.
And do you think at that point in time also the market or the users were ready for the solution that you were bringing?
They were not, because I was not building even for the user. I didn't even know that, I was building an entire company on the premise that people would change their SIM cards at a time when even mobile number portability was not there. And all because, I had heard this fancy term coming from, a lot of other people in the entire network saying that NFC payments is the future. There were a lot of reports, Gartner report, and a lot of others. There were tons of pilots happening across the world in markets similar to India. And I built the entire from premise on market information. And all I should have done is walked up to the guy on the road and said, I give you a fancy SIM card. Will you change your number? And they would be like, no, I will not change my number. Why would I do that? Right. So I should have, and that is a person who was supposed to, whom I was building for, but I did not realize that that was the customer.
Yeah.
I always thought the customer was a mobile operator, a bank, or some other entity in the entire flow. So that failure to realize who the true user was the biggest lesson in my life. And know who your user is, and know what they want, what they would do, and do as much research as you want on your user, because that is the crux of cracking how your startup would work. And if you've cracked that, you don't have to worry a single day for product market fit.
Yeah. And that also tells me that for a lot of entrepreneurs, for a lot of CXOs who are just on their journey of building ventures, a lot of us get swayed by the media insights, by the insights that the market gives, but fail to speak to the users. And this is what happens then, is what my understanding is.
Yes, very true. So all of the insights are required, be it the media insights or all the reports. Do as much reading as possible, but don't stop at it. Go and validate it by talking to your user. Go and understand if this is a real problem that they're trying to solve, that they are facing. Once you get that validation, then you go and build and try and solve for it.
And now with 3 million plus SMEs who are on board as users on Open, how did this insight come from? Did you speak with SMEs? What led to this insight that now that you're building for fintech and a neobank for SMEs, what insights led you to understand that, this is significant enough a problem and must be solved?
So when I started, so I've done four companies before I started Open, and in the winding down process of Neotivity and the earlier company, CashNext was acquired by another company. I landed up in doing a lot of paperwork and trying to understand what was all of these accounts, what it was meant for, and how it's to be done. And much later, even did some B school learning to do my accounting properly. But at the same time, all of it was always in hindsight or different or separate from my actual bank account.
Hmm.
When I was running a payment gateway, there was a time when I had to do 150 settlements manually because no one would give me a bulk upload, which was
Hmm.
something that banks anyway had. But they just didn't realize me to be a bigger startup or a startup that had any bigger potential because we were just a 5 member team. So it was made available only if I would pay, say, 3-4 lakhs as setup fee, and then I would get those. So some at some point in my life, I was sitting and manually settling 150 transactions a day through
Wow.
the maker and the checker, and it was a very painful process. And I always thought that maybe it's my problem that I don't know all of these things. Probably I should not have been a literature student. If I knew, I would have taken BCom. I would have learned all of this. I tried doing some B school learning to figure out where I went, where I'm going wrong, and maybe I'll do it properly next time round. Then my third startup got acquired by Citrus Pay. I was head of marketing at Citrus, and there, as part of just doing things for the startup community, every weekend I would meet a bunch of 20-25 startup entrepreneurs, and I used to tell them that this is such a painful thing, no? And they were like, yeah, it's a painful thing for us also. I was like,
Hmm.
oh, so Mabel was not the only idiot in this world. All the other startup entrepreneurs are also facing the problem. Much later, Citrus got acquired by PayU, and then it was not just I was not just built doing community evangelism for startup entrepreneurs, but I was also talking to the traders. I was also talking to the manufacturing companies or the distributor networks, and I thought that was where everything was sorted, and everyone would have this Lala or Muninji who would sort out all the problems for them. But even other business owners started telling that पेमेंट गेटवे से पेमेंट कितना आया वो पता चल जाता है बिकॉज सेटलमेंट रिपोर्ट है
Hmm.
बट इतना सब ऑफलाइन ट्रांजैक्शंस है सो हाउ डू आई reconcile all of
Hmm.
that. So it was a need that I discovered by talking to users that this is a need that a big segment of people, it's not just the Mabel of the world, but it's also not just the startup entrepreneurs of the world, but also the actual MSMEs who
Hmm.
face these kind of problems. And Dina was then the CFO of Tabzo. Before that, she was my client in my payment
Hmm.
gateway as a CFO of Taxi for Sure. So that's how I know her. And when I asked her, "You're a CFO, you're a finance professional. These are the problems that I hear from the market. How do you see it?" So she was like, "Yeah, even we as finance professionals want a lot of structured data, and we just there are teams that are put in place just to neat out and iron out all the nitty gritties so that we get structured data to make our analysis on."
Hmm.
So there was a big need, even if it was for finance professionals as well. The need was definitely there, and hence it made a lot of sense for us to start building on how to cater out to these needs.
Yeah. And now that you already have 3 million users and they're growing, actually 3.5 million and they're growing, I also want to understand, do you still continue speaking to the users and understand, get insights on what needs to be further built into what you're doing at Open already? Plus, what, if you were to give three key advice for businesses and entrepreneurs and CXOs who are already building for the user, what are the three key insights that you have garnered from your journey at Open now that you have 3.5 million paying SMEs? What have you understood are the three key insights to keep on that growth trajectory?
What was the first part of the question?
The
Was
first being that do you still continue speaking to them?
Yes, we do. And that's a big part of how we drive our efficiencies when it comes to digital marketing as well. Going back and talking to the user, trying to understand how they are interacting with the product. What is it that they are looking for? And that's the base at which we built in all the tools. We try to understand what is it that they want to see, what is it that they want to see here. If invoice is there, e-invoice is there, then what next is required. Role-based accesses, giving role access to your finance teams, to your chartered accountants. All of these things are things that we came to know and discover through interactions with users, and we built back into the product. The other part of it is also now at 3.5 million users, we are going back and checking, how each of these industry segments, we're trying to find out, groups of users that interact in a certain way. So if it is a startup entrepreneur, because till now, if you come to the open dashboard, you'll see everything, and somewhere we feel that people get overwhelmed, thinking this is meant for big companies. It's not for small, freelance teams like us. So what we are now trying to see is, if it's a freelancer who has come into the product, then maybe payroll and expense management might not be relevant to them. So keep it accessible, but hide that into the app store, and then show them things that are relevant to their particular use case. If it's a manufacturing company, then they would want to use us for doing, say, payouts. Make that the first hero product that they see, and then show them other things that are relevant to their segment. So we never stopped talking to the user. We've been constantly iterating and building basis what users want, and going back and rechecking and redoing our interfaces basis how they interact and how they use the platform. We Another key insight that came in from there was a big segment of users were actually using some Chrome plugin to translate the whole thing into Hindi
Okay.
and read it, because our interfaces were all in English. So now we started, seeing how we can use probably Bhashini Rails to see how we can make our interfaces into vernacular languages.
Right.
So those are all insights that came from going and checking on what the user was doing. So talking to the user should never stop. That is one key advice to anyone who's doing a startup. First, know who your true users are. Do as much research, spend as much money as you want, but always, know who the true user is. Secondly, once you have discovered who your user segment lies, where your user segment lies, keep talking to your users to see how they are interacting with it. What are the problems they are facing? Is there some issue that needs to be looked at? Are they, otherwise interacting with your interface? How they are doing it? Are they just sitting and scrolling in the exact thing that the form in which you thought of it as a founder, which might be actually very different from the way the user you interfaces it. So know that difference, and then see what you want to improvise, and keep improvising your product. And if you have to put a metric to it, see if you're getting 10% better than how your user interaction is, and that automatically will start you once you analyze your cohorts and everything. You will automatically see how the interaction improves over a period of time. And these are not short term things like in 1 month you come to know everything. It takes a lot of time and effort, and I think every entrepreneur should put that time and effort in trying and understanding how all of these are. And it's not just for startup entrepreneurs who look at cohorts and all of it. Even for the small entrepreneurs, people who could be home based businesses, could be a fashion designer, someone who's selling on marketplaces. Go back, check how satisfied the customer was. Talk to them.
Yeah.
Once you talk to them, you will know that, oh, they were looking like this and hence they discovered this. Right? Know how the user came into your platform. What is it that your product is doing to solve for them, and what is that one thing that you can improvise the next time.
Yeah.
And this will be a good reality check for every entrepreneur.
Absolutely. And, I think that what I also took away from this is while there are multiple user personas, while you're defining the cohort, um, identify their personas, what if they, whether they are a freelancer, whether they are coming from an enterprise background, or maybe an artist, whoever's using your product or your platform, you've very well profiled them and their personas and understood what is it that is leading them to use the platform for all the value that it is offering. And that also, also took me back to the fact that maybe empathy is what is at the forefront, or maybe not the forefront, but is the foundation of building an enterprise or a business of any kind, whether you are looking at it from a customer centric perspective or even as a leader who's leading teams. What has your journey and learnings as a leader who has built teams across these five ventures? What are some key insights you have as a leader? If you were to pull out some tool, so if leadership was a toolkit, what are the tools that you have used in your leadership journey across these five ventures?
Interesting question. And one thing is, arrogance doesn't help. That's one lesson. Don't be arrogant. You have to be humble. You have to be absolutely humble in your approach. It doesn't help at any point, be it with your customers, be it with your staff, with your employees who are in your journey, or even when you're talking to investors. uh, Now is a time of Shark Tank, and everyone is now knowing what being a startup is, and everyone has a business idea. That one single thing that you should always have is lose your arrogance, lose your ego, and stay humble throughout your journey. And that's a big part of you know the entire journey of a startup. If you have been good at heart, you can't be right to everyone. That's a big lesson as a leader. For some people, you will always be wrong, but there's no point in going down that path. And you can never be right for every single person there. But you can be humble. You can be a good human being, and don't lose that. No matter how much money you make, how much valuation you reach, how many secondaries you do, how many homes you buy, or how many cars you buy, don't lose your humility. And that is the single one secret sauce of running a enterprise and being a good leader. Leadership toolkit mein, yeah, this is one of the things. uh, the other aspect of it that I would like to focus on is giving feedback. And I see a lot of leaders, first time managers or even otherwise, staying away from or steering clear from giving feedback to their employees or to their teammates. Like, अरे उसको कैसे लगेगा? No, this person is not doesn't seem to be fit for my team, but you know what? I'll just put up with it. I don't know how to tell her, right? That it's not working out. So giving feedback is really important, and there's a very good tool that I use for giving feedback, and it's called a burger. A burger कैसे होता है? There's a bun, there's a cutlet, and then there's the closing bun, right? So it's something like appreciation, opportunity, appreciation. Use that as a method to give feedback to anyone, be it to your user or to even to your team member. Wherever there's a time where you have to give feedback, use this as a methodology. Sandwich out the problem areas or points for improvement between two good parts of being that. Use that as a metric, and you will grow to be a good leader, because you ultimately want people to take the feedback, right? It's not like you just, otherwise it'll be just like you're throwing the vada in between or the cutlet at them. It's up to them whether they want to take it or not. But if you make it more palatable,
Yeah.
if you make it look beautiful, then people will want to take it and they will see the value in it.
Yeah. So I think the vada is very important, but as much as the pav.
As much as the power.
Interesting. And I love this. I really love this insight from you, Mabel. You talked about Shark Tank, and Shark Tank always will bring to anybody the thought of investment, equity, and talking about open. You also are a unicorn, so I want to also understand that over a period of last 2 years, there's a massive dip in the investment in the fintech space, almost close to 47% dip in fintech investments. Why do you think that is the case? And how can that change?
It's just the investor cycle or the investment cycles. This dip was there even in the 2001, 2011 time as well. So it is just a pattern, a seasonal pattern of, a trench and then it'll rise again. So it's definitely not something that's going to be there forever. Sectors, they keep changing. Fintech will remain to be a poster child for investors and for VCs for a long time. What in fintech? That is probably something that might change. But even fintech is fast evolving. Uh, and what was called fintech 2 years back is not what is being called fintech today. And 2 years hence, when we see the other side of this stuff, probably will be something else altogether. So fintech is also a fast evolving beast. It's going to stay because that's how not just the user demand is definitely there. There's a lot of things that happened in the background, be it demonetization, be it the UPI adoption, be it the pandemic, which brought a lot of offline world to the online world. So that's going to always remain, and it's going to be 2030 on in fintech and 2040 in fintech, and you'll see fintech always there, but it'll be fast evolving. It'll be very different from. So earlier it was just payments, then it was lending, now it is banking. Then it'll keep evolving in that pattern. And yeah, some of this stuff should have happened at some point, I think, because valuations were going all over the place, and it was kind of a reality check coming in. I think it got a little sooner because of the socio-economic conditions, the war, and the meltdown of stocks. That just accelerated it a little bit. But yeah, we are in it, and it should the other side of it should be another year or year and a half.
Sure, I'm very certain and very positive about that. That another year and a half or so, things will turn around. But fintech, as you say, is here to stay. The form and what gets solved might change. Like you said, from one time, there was a time that payment gateways were a thing. Then there was lending, and now it is now it is the new banking part that you're looking at. So I'm sure the form might change, but fintech is here to stay. And certainly because of the size of the population that we are, and
Yeah.
even globally, challenges will continue to evolve, and so will the solutions. Great, great insights, fabulous insights, and gems and nuggets throughout this conversation, Mabel. I am very intrigued about the fact that you, as an entrepreneur and a serial entrepreneur, who also keeps on being at the forefront of sharing your journey and also managing a business and a unicorn like Open, I am curious to know what is it in your own toolkit for your own sanity. So, if I was to ask you some rituals that you follow or some things that keep you sane and grounded amidst all the chaos that comes across as an entrepreneur, how do you manage yourself and still stay the stoic self that you are? How does that happen? What happens and what leads to that?
For a large part of maybe till last year, probably it was yoga and meditation. And I was pretty regular at it because that's something I figured out that I don't need to depend on. I could be traveling and I could still be doing Surya Namaskar wherever. But there was a phase where I was bedridden with a back injury, and post that I've not been able to go back to yoga. But 5 minutes of meditation every day in some form factor, be it listening to some audio and meditating, or just sitting and enjoying the sound of chirping birds in my garden, or even if it is at night.
Yeah.
After a long day, just before I go to sleep, if I can just listen to those frogs croaking, and just listen, be in that moment for 5 minutes, that kind of keeps me sane. The other part of it is in my weekends, I try to grow some vegetables.
Oh,
So
lovely.
going back and playing with soil somewhere, that grounds me a little bit.
Lovely. And I do know that of all the conversations I've had with all the CXOs, phenomenal ones. Everybody has their own way of keeping themselves centered and stoic amidst all the chaos that entrepreneurship brings. And meditation or some form of meditating has always been a part of any CXO's toolkit. And with
And
that,
people think that, meditation means that, oh, you have to spend half an hour doing it. No, it doesn't. It could be just 2 minutes.
yeah,
But be in that moment, that being completely aware in that 2 minutes, that itself is enough.
yeah. And with that, we are at the concluding part of this conversation with you, Mabel, on CXO Talks. And the question that I have, so as a part of the CXO ritual, CXO show talks ritual, what we do is we have every CXO pass forward a question to the next CXO. While you would not know who it is getting passed on to, but you will still pass on a question from your journey and whatever you feel that you'd want to know from another CXO. So the question that I have for you first is from Aditi Balbir, who was on our last episode. And the question, so Aditi, by the way, is the founder of Eco Ratings, has also led sustainability businesses, been an investment banker, and happens to have also found and run V Resorts. But the question that we have from her is that if something is not working for you, what do you do to accept that change?
I analyze to know whether it is really not working. And once I'm quick to accept that, I'm very open minded,
Yeah.
So once I realize that something is not working, then yeah, I learned earlier, much earlier in my journey when I was much younger, that, to accept that reality, it takes a lot of effort. Now I'm more conscious of it. And once I know things are not working out, I just quickly put it to a stop and just find out what is the next best thing to do from there. If it's a pivot, it's a pivot. If it is taking on something else, take on something else. But
Yeah.
don't stop.
Yeah. I think I'm reminded of this movie Joker where he says, I think his mother passes away and he says that the show must
Show
go
must
on,
go on.
right?
Yes.
So come what may, you cannot stop. And that's indeed the journey of any entrepreneur, any successful person, any CXO. With that, Mabel, now it is your chance
My
to.
chance to ask questions.
Yes.
Okay, what was your biggest failure, and how did you cope up with it, and what was your biggest learning from it? That is my question for the next person, next CXO on CXO Talks.
And I'm sure we'll get a very insightful answer on that as well from another CXO like we did from you. And with that, it is a wrap. And thank you so much, Mabel, for your time, despite all the busy schedules and making it to our studio. Thank you so much for that.
I'm so glad we did this in person, and I've completely enjoyed this entire time that I spent talking to all of you.
Thank you.
Thank you.